Hey, welcome back to the Solution Center. I'm Aaron TV Ball. Today we have a really special guest with us, Mr. Clifton Beck. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
Going good. Welcome back. You very familiar to most of the viewers here as you were the founder of the channel. And so all the work you did here, we appreciate. Now in a new role with the ESCO Institute. And this year you've really taken a deep dive into the whole A2L conversion.
Yeah, a lot going on in that field. You know, a lot of my background is in commercial refrigeration, and we've spent a lot of time going through a refrigerant transition back in the 90s and early 2000s. And we did in residential as well, from that R22 into R410A. But we're going to see a lot more action in this HFC phase down than we did in the HCFC phase out. So we'll talk about the differences between like phase downs and phase outs, and we'll get a little bit more intimate with refrigerants and what these transitions look like for everybody.
Yeah, so a lot of education going on when it comes to this topic, not only now, but through the end of 2024, because of the big piece will be in 2025. But for us specifically, on December 19th, we're hosting an event live at our Indianapolis West location where you're going to be teaching a 4-hour class from 8 a.m. to noon on this topic in specific, and we're going to stream it to 3 other locations in 3 of our regions: Lexington, Kentucky, Cincinnati South, Dalton Avenue, and Monroeville in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so kind of walk us through some of the things you'll be talking about and going into detail with that day.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we start talking about this entire refrigerant transition, it really comes down to the HFC phase down, the hydrofluorocarbon refrigerants that we're all comfortable with. Things like R410A and 404 and 134A, all of the refrigerants that we've gotten used to over the last couple of decades, they're actually all getting phased down. And so we're going to have an 85% reduction in the manufacturing of all these refrigerants during this phase down. So what that means to us is that we're going to have a lot of new refrigerants hitting the market to be getting comfortable with. Now, in the residential field, like when we went from 22 to 410, we had a pretty clean transition. But when we go from R410A into our new refrigerants, it's not going to be as definitive. There's going to be different refrigerants depending on what manufacturer you're working with.
Sure.
So we'll have things like R32 and R454B, which is, if we look at R32, it's actually half of the R410A that we know today. Okay. And then our 454B, it's a blended refrigerant with R32 and 1234YF. So we'll dive into what all of those refrigerants look like and all of the safe handling practices that we need to know going forward. Because there's a lot of things that we have to rethink about as technicians when we start talking about using new refrigerants. And that'll be the focus of the entire program.
Yeah, and one of the areas there's been a ton of questions on, we did a short video on it, just kind of an introduction, but it's the whole piece on the tools. So what types of tools do they currently have they're still going to be able to use? They'll be compliant with the new refrigerant. What's going to have to be replaced, and what adjustments are going to have to be made moving forward? Is that some of the information you'll be covering on this day?
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about what it means to go from the current refrigerants that we know, which are primarily A1 ASHRAE classifications, which means they are low toxicity, low flammability, into this new classification of A2Ls, which means they are mildly flammable. So we'll look at the differences between tools, and a lot of our tool manufacturers have already been prepping for this transition. Sure. But we need to check our own supply and see if we are using tools that are rated for that. If we're using a 20-year-old vacuum pump that's got a permanent split capacitor driven motor on it that has potential for spark and ignition on startup, we're not going to be using those on our A2L refrigerants. Okay. But a lot of the tools that we have been buying for the last few years have already modified the technology, so they will be compliant. But we'll have to look at that, and I know we're going to have some tool suppliers there, and we're going to be looking through different tool lists, showing the ones that are currently A2L compliant, and some of which are even A3 compliant for our highly flammable, those R290 and R600s, isobutane and propane. We won't be using those in residential applications, though. And so we'll also dive into some of those misperceptions and the ideas that we're going to be using highly flammable refrigerants in residential applications, which we are absolutely not. So we'll talk about what each of those different classifications look like, just to verify that our tools are capable to work with them.
Yeah, sounds good. That's going to be an important piece for the contractors for sure.
Yes, most definitely.
Another piece I know some folks have been asking about are the mitigation parts and pieces that will be going on some systems. Are you going to go into that as well on this day?
Yeah, we'll dive real deep in what mitigation actually is. It's going to be the additional refrigerant leak detection sensor,
Gotcha.
as well as a mitigation board on some pieces of equipment. But on some of our smaller pieces that will be using less than 4 pounds of refrigerant, we're not even going to be adding mitigation. And we'll talk about what that is, why we're only using that in certain applications, and how that will appear on the equipment. And we'll actually show some examples that different manufacturers will be using on their equipment going forward so that we have an idea what to anticipate when it gets here.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'll be a big piece too. And they'll definitely want to
Yes.
be educated about that so they can then educate their homeowners as well.
Yeah.
All right. So all this is going to take place on December 19th here, 1125 Western Drive in Indy for the live show. We're going to feed that, stream it down to Lexington, up into Monroeville, Pittsburgh, and then Cincinnati, South Dalton. We're also going to have some vendors on hand that'll be talking about the tools and showing new equipment and tools that they're going to have that will be compliant and helping you kind of figure out how to search yours, serial number, model number, and those types of things to see if they will be compliant.
Yeah.
So great stuff. We're excited to have it. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it a lot. And if you like the things that we're bringing to you, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video. If you want to reach out to Clifton, they can find you where?
Yeah, you can find me at cbeck@escogroup.org for the email, and all of our content is at escogroup.org, as well as our video media on YouTube, which is ESCO Institute-HVAC Excellence.
And you do a weekly piece there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Every Thursday at 4:30 Eastern, we do a live multi-stream. So I'll broadcast through LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and we bring on different industry trainers to talk about all of these topics that we're facing in the industry. So great opportunity to sit down firsthand with some of the best educators in the HVACR and building sciences industry.
What do you got coming up this week?
Oh man, so this is going to be a really good one. So actually this week we're going to be sitting down with Honeywell and talking about Honeywell's new A2L and A2L blended refrigerants. So we're going to be stepping each week into this realm of A2Ls and all of the changes in technology that we're encountering.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, we appreciate you stopping by, Clifton. Always a pleasure. Can't wait to see you on December 19th.
Same here. Thanks a lot, Aaron. See you all
All right, thanks.
then.